Good evening everyone, welcome to BAJIRAO IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. Today is 26th August 2025 and today we have some important topics from the Hindu newspaper. So all these topics that we're going to discuss are very important for both prelims and mains exam. So let's understand these topics in a detailed and in-depth manner. So the first topic with which we're going to start this discussion is about India-Japan relations. So let's analyze India-Japan relations in a deeper and in-depth manner. So remember that this topic has been given in the Hindu newspaper and this could be important for the Gender Studies paper 2 in international relations. So let's understand the context very briefly before actually discussing the India and Japan relations. So the context is that recently Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to visit Japan, followed by China, to attend the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit meeting. So in fact this visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Japan will start on August 29, and in fact this visit to both Japan and China, it comes at a critical juncture or a critical period of shifting global geopolitics. So when I say shifting global geopolitics, so earlier India used to have very good relations with US, but due to recent stance of US President Donald Trump on India and increasing tariffs on Indian goods which are exported to US, and close relations between US and Pakistan, and in fact India has been trying to improve its relations with China. So all these factors have been pointing out towards a shifting global geopolitics. So therefore this visit from Prime Minister Narendra Modi to both Japan and China are important at a period of time of shifting global geopolitics. So in fact also understand that after severing ties between India and US, after US President Donald Trump has imposed tariffs on Indian goods, India has also trying to improve its relations with China. So therefore we can also see a tentative signs of easing its relations with China after a prolonged tensions that was started with Galwan clashes, and before Galwan clashes also across line of actual control. That is actually an undemarcated border between India and China, and there were border disputes between India, China, and this still continues, and therefore it actually shows that there is a tentative signs of easing these tensions after a prolonged issues between both India and China. And in fact, so we should also understand the other dimension of it. So the other dimension is that there is a growing uncertainty and unpredictability on the part of India-US relations as well, particularly because of Trump's policies on India's exports to US. So therefore these factors are also pushing India away from US, close to China, and India is also looking for the alternatives in the sense like Japan, China, and other major players, right? So that India can actually navigate this unpredictability or uncertainty in the changing global geopolitics. And apart from that, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's engagement with Japan, or his visit that is going to start on August 29. So this is also very important and very significant to further strengthen India-Japan relationship, particularly in the bilateral context, because it actually reflects India's strategic intent, and it also a strong signal to both China and US as well, because Japan is a trustworthy partner for India, a friend of India, an all-weather friend of India, and Japan is also investing heavily in India. So therefore, keeping all these factors in mind, so India's engagement with Japan bilaterally is very, very important. So let's understand India and Japan relations in a very detailed way, right? So in fact, let's understand what are the major investments of Japan in India, and what are other important areas of cooperation or collaboration between both India and Japan. So let's try and understand these aspects as well. So recently Japan has also announced a massive investment in India. It amounts to around 10 trillion yen. right? So it is close to 68 billion dollars of investment plan in India. So in fact it is a massive amount of investment in India's infrastructure, so that will significantly help and improve India's infrastructure, and that will also help reduce the logistic cost as well, and it will help us attract more and more investment as well. And in fact we can say that this $68 billion investment from Japan to India is one of Japan's most ambitious pledges to India. And apart from that, this investment in different areas, including infrastructure development, manufacturing sector, clean energy, green hydrogen, and technology. So it actually showcases that Japan is ready to invest in India's different sectors. So therefore it actually showcases Japan has a long-term stake in India's overall growth and development. And Japan is also strongly committed for the sustainable development goals in India as well. So therefore mutually collaborating and cooperating with each other in number of areas. And in this context, Japan is also ready to invest around 68 billion US dollars in different sectors in India. So that will help in economic growth and economic development of India in the long term. So similarly, Japan is also investing in E10 series Shinkansen rails. So they are bullet trains, right? So they will help in faster travel, right? They are being called as E10 series Shinkansen bullet trains, and with the help of Japan, India is going to start its first bullet train from Mumbai to Ahmedabad. So therefore Japan has been investing in India's bullet train project from Mumbai to Ahmedabad as well. So therefore this actually reflects a strong economic collaboration on the part of India and Japan is also ready to transfer technology that it already has, so that this technology will enormously help India in achieving the developmental objectives, right? So Japan is ready for the technology transfer, and Japan is also ready for the strong economic collaboration with India, and one such aspect is E10 series Shinkansen bullet train from Mumbai to Ahmedabad. Apart from investing 68 billion US dollars in different sectors that we have already discussed. So both India and Japan have a joint declaration on security and cooperation that was signed by these two countries in the year 2008. So in fact both India and Japan have committed to revise this joint declaration on security cooperation. So security is also another very important dimension for these two countries. So therefore they have decided to revise the 2008 joint declaration on security cooperation. So therefore this revision could actually align with the changing geopolitical realities, including the cybersecurity domain and the maritime domain awareness. So therefore this joint declaration on security and cooperation will takes into consideration, or it will take care of the cybersecurity aspect as well as the maritime domain awareness. So this is also very important in the context of growing importance for the Indo-Pacific. Now India is central to Indo-Pacific, and Japan also have a very important stakes in Indo-Pacific. So therefore this maritime domain awareness also assumes a lot of significance. And apart from that, if you look at the cybercrime vulnerability, so India is the most vulnerable country, as well as Japan also. So therefore cybersecurity is also a very important domain for these two countries. So therefore this actually cover these two dimensions. And there are other critical areas of engagement between India and Japan, and they're very important for these two countries, right? So therefore they decided to further strengthen and enhance cooperation in the areas of semiconductors, critical minerals, pharmaceuticals, and the renewable energy as well. Now remember that India wanted to become a net zero by the year 2070. So we wanted to become net zero by the year 2070. So in order to achieve this objective, we should make a transition towards the renewable forms of energy. And apart from that, reducing emission intensity of our economy, and also reducing our dependence on fossil fuel, which are mostly imported from other countries. So it is very important that we need to switch over to the renewable forms of energy. Now, in fact, India is known as a pharmaceutical capital of the world. So therefore, India can actually play a larger role in ensuring universal access to healthcare or access to affordable medicine. So therefore, pharmaceutical is also another very important sector. Both India and Japan are ready to cooperate. And critical minerals, so we don't have self-reliance in the arena of critical minerals. So critical minerals are very important for several sectors. So whether it is a defense, space, or even for that matter, renewable energy, electric vehicles. So for all those different industries, critical minerals are very important. As of now, we have dependent on a number of countries for critical minerals, mostly China. So we should also reduce this dependence on China, and we need to be self-reliant, or we should further diversify our supply chains to achieve supply chain resilience with respect to the critical minerals. Now, semiconductors is also another very important domain, and it has been assuming a lot of significance, and India has been looking to further strengthen semiconductor manufacturing in India itself. So therefore, India need technology, India need investment, finance. So therefore, Japan is ready to provide all these things. So therefore, India and Japan are ready to collaborate in all these different areas. And in fact, so as I have already told you, that Indo-Pacific is also another very important area where India and Japan have stakes. India is central to Indo-Pacific, and Japan also have a lot of interest in the Indo-Pacific region. So both India and Japan are committed for a free, open and rules-based Indo-Pacific. So they actually share this vision of free, open and rules-based Indo-Pacific, particularly in the context or in the backdrop of Chinese growing assertion and aggression in the Indo-Pacific region. So therefore, so if we talk about the regional security in the Indo-Pacific region, so both India and Japan have placed their ties forefront for achieving regional security and also the technological cooperation. So if we talk about critical minerals, semiconductors, renewable energy, pharmaceuticals, right? So therefore, there are also implications for the South China Sea and the Bay of Bengal area as well. So in Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, South China Sea, so there is a growing Chinese assertiveness and aggression as well. So this is a concern for Japan and India as well. So they are ready to tackle this challenge mutually, right? So in fact, apart from that, what is the essential message that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is sending to the rest of the world by his visits to both Japan and China as well? So after Japan's visit, he is going to attend a Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting. So that is going to take place in China. So what the essential message that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is sending, right? So in fact, it is being said that this visit is not about immediate diplomatic outcome. So this is not to achieve any immediate diplomatic outcome. Rather, it is a signal from Indian side to a steady strategic intent that India has been displaying, right? So this actually symbolizes India's steady strategic intent. So when I say steady strategic intent, so there is a growing unpredictability with US after Donald Trump became president of US, and apart from that, so the tensions between India and US after US President Donald Trump has imposed a 50% tariffs on Indian goods. So therefore, this actually reflects a strategic intent from the Indian side. And apart from that, India has been trying to improve its relations with China as well. So therefore, there is a commitment and willingness on the part of India to keep channels open with the China. Despite there's an underlying mistrust and concerns over Chinese growing influence in the Indian Ocean region, Bay of Bengal area as well, right? So that we have concerns with respect to China, but despite having such concerns, so we are open to dialogue with China. We are open to other means of engagement with China, whether through bilateral means or through multilateral platforms like SCO, BRICS or RIC, which is Russia, India, China grouping. And in fact, so India is now ready to deal with US unpredictability as well. Now US has become unpredictable now under US President Donald Trump. So therefore India is now ready to navigate the US unpredictability with a wavering commitment. So therefore it potentially impact the multilateral platforms as well. Multilateral platforms in the sense that BRICS. So BRICS countries are very often looking for the alternative currency to US dollar. However, US is not in favor of such a move from the BRICS countries because it can reduce the dominance of US dollar. However, India very often saying that not in favor of this any currency which could dominate the US dollar. Rather, India wanted that a sustainable level of trade between BRICS countries along with the alternative means to US dollar, right? So that may not directly affect the US dollar's dominance. So therefore, India and Japan partnership at this point of time, it actually reflects a reliable anchor in the Indo-Pacific region because they are the most reliable countries with a policy stability, unlike US or countries like Australia. Right? So US has become unpredictable, but Japan and India are not unpredictable. So they have a policy stability. So they have a proper vision and they stick to it. So therefore we can say that both Japan and India are a reliable anchor in the Indo-Pacific area. And in fact, this partnership between India and Japan in the Indo-Pacific area would cover the economic resilience. So when I say economic resilience, both these countries are committed for strong economic development and cooperation, including semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, renewable energy, and also the critical minerals. So this is economic resilience. So they wanted to achieve economic resilience, supply chain resilience, and diversification of the supply chains. They no longer depend on one country like China. So this is the economic resilience. And apart from that, the maritime security. So maritime security in the Indo-Pacific region is also very important because the maritime domain has been facing number of threats, right? So piracy, terrorism, trafficking, right? So and disasters. So therefore the maritime security is also very, very important. So it deals with anti-piracy operations, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, anti-trafficking, regulating illegal fishing. So all these factors comes under the maritime security. So therefore India and Japan are ready to collaborate in the maritime security domain as well. So apart from that, the shared democratic values. Remember, India is the largest democracy in the world and Japan is also a democracy. So therefore they have the democratic values of rules-based order, freedom. So all these factors comes under the democratic values. So therefore they are also committed for the shared democratic values as well. However, this visit from Prime Minister Narendra Modi, so it actually highlights the flexibility without losing strategic clarity. Now flexibility in the sense that we are looking for the alternatives to US because we are moving away from the US because US is unpredictable. So there is no policy stability on the part of the US, and so because of this reason, so it shows actually India's flexibility without losing a strategic clarity. So we have a strong strategic clarity, right? So but we are flexible. So therefore it can be a defining feature of recent foreign policy and G20 president. So we all knew that in the year 2023, India hosted the G20 summit. So therefore, it is a defining feature of India's recent foreign policy engagement with other countries. So this visit from Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Japan actually underscores India's strategic partnership with Japan. So we all knew that we have been enjoying a strategic partnership and strong relations with Japan. So this visit also underscores the same thing. And in fact, both these countries have their own and independent Indo-Pacific strategy, and these Indo-Pacific strategy from both India and Japan, so they actually converge, right? So and in fact they also looking for a counterbalance to the regional challenges. So when I say counterbalance to regional challenges, so both Japan and India are looking at China as a main threat. So therefore, so if they come together, so they could act as a potential strategic counterbalance to regional challenges posed by countries like China, right? So I hope you have understood about that, and let's understand the way forward as well. So what India and Japan should do so that they can actually navigate this geopolitical unpredictability together. So if we talk about that, as I've already told you, that Japan has been investing in India around 68 billion US dollars in different areas, whether it is infrastructure and semiconductors, technology, renewable energy, so all these different domains. So therefore there is a need to sustain this momentum in infrastructure, technology and digital domains, while further strengthening defense and security ties, including joint exercises like Malabar and Dharma Guardian. So both these countries are celebrating these exercises called Malabar and Dharma Guardian. And apart from that, there is a need to fast track cooperation in semiconductors and critical minerals, pharmaceuticals and clean energy. So this is very important to build resilient supply chains and also address the trade deficits that both India and Japan have. So with Japan we have a trade deficit, right? So therefore there is a need to address this trade deficit, and there is also a need to address the resilient there is a need to ensure resilient supply chains, right? So therefore they need to fast track the cooperation in the arenas of semiconductor, critical minerals, pharmaceuticals and clean energy as well. And in fact, so India should continue its engagement with China through the dialogue and the potential counterbalancing measures. So when I say the potential counterbalancing measures, so as I've already told you that both India and Japan are looking at China as a major challenge, so therefore they can come together and act as a potential counterbalancing measure. So therefore India should continue its engagement with China through dialogue and these counterbalancing measures, and apart from that India should also look for safeguarding its sovereignty, and India should also maintain constructive ties with US despite the existing uncertainties. So despite of existing such uncertainties, India should continue its engagement with US and China as well. So that could be more a prudent policy, right? So that could be a wiser policy. And apart from that, there is a need to work with both Japan and Australia to keep grouping relevant and credible as well. So we need to keep this group relevant and credible as well. So therefore Australia, like Japan, is also a very important player in the Indo-Pacific region. So therefore we should work with both Japan and Australia to keep the grouping relevant and credible. So if I say the grouping, which is Quad grouping, right? So quadrilateral security dialogue. So in fact, despite US such diversion from the Indo-Pacific, diversion from Quad, diversion from strengthening its relations with India and other important players in the region, so India should further strengthen its relations with both Japan and Australia to keep this group relevant and credible as well. And both India and Japan should also cooperate on number of other areas, including improving quality infrastructure and Chinese debt trap diplomacy concerns. So several countries in the Indo-Pacific region have been facing the problem of the Chinese debt trap. So these two countries have the potential, they have the capability to act against the debt trap diplomacy of China. So therefore they should come together and they should act against this debt trap diplomacy of China. And apart from that, collaborate with the like-minded democracies. So India is a democracy, Japan is a democracy, Australia is a democracy. So therefore there are a number of like-minded democracies in the region and beyond the region. So therefore there is a need to collaborate with these like-minded democracies. So therefore it will help in ensuring free, open and rules-based Indo-Pacific, particularly in the Malacca Strait and the surrounding regions. And apart from that, there is a need to focus on joint initiatives like skill development, human resources, startup ecosystems and joint credit mechanism. So therefore it could actually foster innovation and industrial competitiveness as well, right? So this could be the way forward between India and Japan relations to navigate this growing unpredictability and shift in global geopolitics. So I hope you have understood this topic in a detailed and in-depth way, and if you have any doubts regarding this, so please comment those doubts in the comment section and we'll be answering those doubts as well. So the next important topic is India and Fiji bilateral relations. So if you look at Fiji, which is a small island nation which is located in the Pacific Ocean east of Australia, right? So you can see this is the location of Fiji, a small island nation in the Pacific Ocean. So in fact, Fiji is a small island developing state, and it has been facing number of threats. So one such threat is climate change and increasing sea levels, submergence of its coastlines. So therefore it has been facing number of threats, and India is also known as the leader of the global south. So India can actually assist these small island developing states in number of ways, right? So India has already launched a number of programs such as Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, so that will actually help these small island developing states to become more and more resilient. And India's cooperation and friendship with these countries is also very important. So in this context, so let's understand this in a very detailed way. So the context is that Prime Minister of Fiji, who is Sitiveni Rabuka, right? So he actually paid an official visit to India recently, where India and Fiji, so they have reaffirmed their commitment to further strengthen the cooperation in the areas of defense, healthcare, climate action, and the Indo-Pacific region, right? So this is the context. So we have relations with these small island developing states in number of different areas, whether it is healthcare, education, climate change, defense, security in the Indo-Pacific region. So all these areas are very, very important for a country like India, which has been aspiring to become a global leader. So let's understand the historical and cultural ties between India and Fiji. So what kind of a historical and cultural ties that these two countries have been enjoying? Now, in fact, there are over 60,000 Indian indentured laborers. So these indentured laborers in Fiji are being called as Girmitiyas, right? So this is very, very, very important for prelims examination, right? So these Girmitiyas are the indentured laborers in Fiji. So they are being migrated to Fiji between 1879 and 1916. So therefore it has resulted in Fiji becoming a multicultural society. And apart from that, the 12th World Hindi Conference, so that was hosted by Fiji in the year 2023, and it is also a celebration of Girmit Day 2025, right? So this also highlights the cultural bonding between both India and Fiji. And in fact, India also deputed a Hindi Sanskrit teacher to University of Fiji and supported participation of Fijian Pandits in International Gita Mahotsav 2025 as well. So this is how the historical and cultural ties between India and Fiji spanned across different arenas. So let's understand the strategic and defense cooperation between both India and Fiji. So MOU on defense cooperation has been signed in the year 2017, and it has been reaffirmed in the year 2025. And in fact, the number of areas where India and Fiji have been regularly cooperating and collaborating, so they are including UN peacekeeping. Now we all knew that India is one of the largest countries to collaborate or support UN peacekeeping, and the military medicine, military cooperation, medicine, pharmaceutical, wide shipping, information exchange, cybersecurity, and maritime domain awareness or maritime security. So these are number of areas both India and Fiji have been regularly collaborating with each other. And apart from that, India also established a defense wing in its High Commission, which is located in Suva, and also gifted 2 ambulances to Fiji military forces. And in fact, a planned Indian naval ship port call to Fiji has also been made recently as well. So let's understand economic, agricultural, and connectivity between both India and Fiji. So these are the other areas where the cooperation between India and Fiji are being extended. So Fiji has actually granted market access to Indian ghee recently. And apart from that,
India even gifted 12 agricultural drones and 2 mobile soil testing laboratories to Fiji to further strengthen its cooperation with the Fiji in the area of agriculture. And recently, memorandum of understanding are also being signed with NABARD for the microfinance and Fiji Development Bank for agricultural financing, and that is going to benefit the agriculture of Fiji. And apart from that, the sugar sector has been supported by India. So Fiji's sugar sector has been supported by India with the training programs and even the technical expertise as well. So therefore, Fiji has been benefiting a strong agricultural and economic cooperation with India. So let's understand the multilateral and regional engagements between India and Fiji as well. So it is being said that Fiji supports India's bid to UNSC's permanent membership. We all knew that India wanted to become a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. So as of now, India is not a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. There are 5 members who enjoy veto power. So therefore, India is a country which is a democracy, which is the 4th largest economy in the world, which is a country with the largest population in the world, but it has denied the UNSC permanent membership seat. So therefore, it has been aspiring for the permanent membership of the United Nations Security Council. And India is also looking for UNSC non-permanent member for the year 28 and 29. So therefore, India needed support from Fiji for both this. So in fact, a collaboration between India and Fiji about Forum for India Pacific Islands Cooperation and Pacific Island Forum as well, right? So Fiji is also expected to join Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, and it also supports the theme of Oceans for Peace as well, right? So these are the number of areas where India's engagement with Fiji extended to, and this could be very important for the mains examination. So the next important topic is, recently Supreme Court has asked the government to form guidelines to regulate the conduct on social media. So we recently started feeling the ill effects of social media because of lack of regulation. But recently the Supreme Court has asked the government to form guidelines to regulate the social media, right? So let's understand about this. So the context. So what exactly is the context? So the context is that Supreme Court has recently directed the union government to frame guidelines for regulating social media conduct, especially concerning the commercialized free speech by influencers after hearing a case involving insensitive jokes about persons with disabilities. Right, so it is very, very important in a country like India to regulate the social media, and the government should take the responsibility of framing such rules and guidelines, right? So so that the aspect of free speech being commercialized on social media, particularly by the influencers. So if there are regulations, so they would use social media in a much more responsible way, right? Because in recent times there is insensitive content in social media, particularly jokes about the persons with disabilities, jokes about the parents, which are insensitive in nature. So because of all these factors, the Supreme Court has asked the union government to frame rules and guidelines to regulate the social media. So let's understand the judicial observations on free speech. So what are the judicial observations on this? So the judicial observations, including the Supreme Court has observed that the influencers and comedians on social media, so they very often monetize speech. So this is also called as commercialization of free speech, and that cannot justify hurting sentiments of vulnerable people, whether it is women, children, or persons with benchmark disabilities. So they should not hurt the sentiments of vulnerable group of people. And in this context, Supreme Court Judge Justice Bagchi highlighted the humor must not breach the sensibilities in a diverse society like India. And in fact, if I say a diverse society, a number of group of people, for example women, children, minorities, persons with benchmark disabilities, senior citizens. So this is a diverse society, so therefore a humor must not breach the sensibilities of these different group of people. And another Supreme Court judge, Justice Kant, has emphasized that the guidelines that the government is going to frame, they must provide clear, proportionate and consequences for the violations to prevent the misuse of the free speech by the people as well. So therefore there will be a clear and proportionate guidelines, and apart from that the consequences for the violation of these guidelines and penalties as well. And in fact this case actually involved comedians including Samay Raina. So they have accused of making derogatory comments about the persons with benchmark disabilities. So therefore this is not acceptable. So influencers, they are commercializing free speech and they are passing on insensitive comments on persons with benchmark disabilities in a diverse society like India. This is not at all acceptable, and this is the stand of the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court has also asked the government to frame clear guidelines and also the consequences for the violation of these guidelines. And Supreme Court Judge Justice Kant underlined that such remarks, they actually undermine efforts to integrate the disabled people into the mainstream society. So there are a number of efforts and attempts to integrate the persons with disabilities into the mainstream society. But if the society remains insensitive, so therefore it actually undermines the efforts to integrate these disabled persons. And court also directed the comedians to issue an unconditional apology and suggested influencers should use their platforms to spread awareness rather than creating or passing such insensitive comments on persons with benchmark disabilities. So let's understand government and the legal framework which actually guides this. Now, Attorney General actually stated that the guidelines would primarily aim at sensitization. Right, so if the government can come up with these guidelines, so those guidelines would primarily aim at sensitization, but also hold violators accountable. So if they violated these guidelines, any social media influencer violated these guidelines in an attempt to commercialize his free speech, so then those social media influencers would also be held accountable for violation of the guidelines. And in fact, the Supreme Court has also referred to its jurisdiction, its jurisprudence, distinguishing between free speech or commercial speech and the prohibited speech. So therefore, there is an overlap. So very often there is an overlap between free speech, commercial speech, and also the prohibited speech. So it is very important to understand this overlap and segregate these three different domains. And the Supreme Court has also clarified that it is not curtailing the free speech but ensuring a framework that actually distinguishes between free expression and harmful speech. So let's understand the significance of the judgment from the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court has actually recognized the growing influence of the digital platforms. So there has been excessive and growing influence from the digital platforms, and the Supreme Court has rightly recognized, and Supreme Court has also asked the Union government to frame the guidelines to regulate the commercialization of the free speech. And in fact, these influences can also shape the public discourse as well. So therefore, the Supreme Court has rightly understood and recognized this fact as well. And in fact, the commercialization of free speech also raises the accountability concerns as speech become both content and the commodity as well. And the directive from the Supreme Court reinforces the constitutional value of dignity that has been enshrined in Article 21, right to life and dignity for all citizens, particularly the marginalized groups, children, women, persons with disabilities, and the senior citizens and other vulnerable group of people. So I hope you have understood this. And next important topic is stealth frigates. Udaygiri and Hemagiri are they joined Indian Navy recently. So let's understand about the stealth frigates Udaygiri and Hemagiri. Now, what is the context? The context is that recently Indian Navy commissioned stealth frigates Udaygiri and Himagiri at Vishakhapatnam in the presence of Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. So therefore, this actually marks for the first time the two frontline surface combatants from different shipyards. So they commissioned together at once. So therefore, it further enhances India's blue water naval capabilities. Now, what is a blue water naval capabilities? Now, it actually signifies the dominance of Indian Navy in the Indian Ocean region. Excuse me. So what are the key highlights of commissioning this? So let's understand the key highlights of commissioning this. So this was held in the commissioning ceremony was held in Vishakhapatnam, and in fact this is the first ever dual commissioning on the part of Indian Navy for the two frontline surface combatants. They were built in different shipyards, and in fact, so both these frigates, Udaygiri and Himagiri, so they are designed to enhance stealth features, weapons, and even the sensor systems that they are being equipped with. And apart from that, Udaygiri and Himagiri are also capable of executing full spectrum of maritime missions in blue water operations or high seas. So therefore, it actually reinforces the strategic importance in India's eastern seaboard. Right, so these are some of the key highlights about both Udaygiri and Himagiri. Now, this Udaygiri has been built by Mazagon Dock Shipbuilders Limited, Mumbai. However, Himagiri has been built by Garden Reach Shipbuilders and Engineers in Kolkata. So Himagiri has been built in Kolkata and Udaygiri has been built in Mumbai, Mazagon Shipbuilders Limited. So therefore, this Udaygiri and Himagiri, so they actually reflects India's growing synergy between India's premier defense shipyards. So therefore, it is also expected to augment Indian naval combat readiness, and it will further strengthen the maritime deterrence in Indian Ocean region. So this is also in line with Atmanirbharta or self-reliance, and it will also give a push to the Make in India vision as well. So let's understand about the stealth frigates. So what are these stealth frigates? Now, what are the frigates? So let's understand the frigate. So frigate is a warship, right? So in fact, they are versatile in the surface combatant in the Navy. And in fact, these frigates are equipped with anti-air, anti-surface, anti-submarine warfare. So therefore, you can imagine how important these frigates are actually. So apart from that, so these frigates equipped with stealth technology. So stealth technology actually means that they are designed to reduce radar cross section, making these vessels not easily detectable by the enemy ships or enemy radars. And they would further strengthen India's blue water naval capabilities, operating deep oceans across the global waters beyond the territorial waters as well. So this is being called as the blue water naval capability. And now in this context, we need to understand Project 17A. So this Project 17A frigates like Udaygiri and Himagiri, so they actually form the backbone of India's stealth warship program. Now, other platforms like INS Vikrant, which is an indigenous aircraft carrier that has been developed domestically in India, and Scorpion class submarines and upcoming destroyers are the other platforms, right? So in fact, it is strategically very important because it can reinforce India's net security provider role in the Indo-Pacific region and beyond as well. So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much.